All right, can I have a motion, please?
Oh, right.
I was going to say, where's Peter?
All right, I'm not paying attention. No, actually, I'm looking at something.
Yeah, we're trying to get our computers open here.
I move that we reconvene the open session.
Second. Catch that time. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, motion is carried. All right, order of business. There's no public appearances today. And can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion is carried. All right, recognitions.
Okay. We are looking forward to welcoming back staff and students to the 23-24 school year. Our new teachers will receive orientation and training beginning August 22nd, and all faculty and staff will return on Monday, August 28th, and the first day of students will be on September 1st. And I'll have a little bit more detail we'll talk about during my superintendent report. Next item you also are aware of, but we've had an opportunity to have this recognized in our local Perry Fair, that 7 MGHS students, along with art teacher Ida Zvodik, traveled to Michigan this summer for the American Youth Foundation's annual National Leadership Conference. They spent the week participating in various relationship building activities, giving students the ability to develop leadership skills, and we loved hearing how the conference positively impacted these students. One describing how it provided an opportunity to view how I want to live my life in a healthy way. And so what's exciting is there's more about the conference in the Herald Independent this past week. And fall sports are now in full swing of practices, and we'd like to wish them the best of luck in the upcoming season. We're so proud of their dedication to their sport and determination on their skill set. So we look forward to cheering them on this fall.
And Dan, could I just add, last night at the concerts in Winnequa Park, Monona Grove graduate was the lead singer, Leslie Goff, and for those who were able to see it, she was just absolutely stunning, and you gotta be proud for all the work that comes. And her brother, Brooks, was in the audience, who was one of the lead people in the musical last year. So, I mean, it's just a really nice thing. And the week before, the concert was Carl Davik, and he had a lot of the Monona Grove's music staff with him. And then as you went out, a lot of the Monona Grove staff was there. People like Pat Dorn and Doug Evans. Anyway, there was Bob Schiffer. It was just a really nice experience. So again, I encourage you, if we can get Leslie back next year and Carl, it'll be loads of fun.
All right, thanks for sharing. All right, no correspondence and announcements. And moving on to administrative reports.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, didn't
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is a summer school report. So Lisa Height put together a very detailed memo, I think, with regard to the summer school program. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but she'll be glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
No questions?
No, but
I'm sorry, behind the page here.
for people that might be watching and maybe not have access to the report, maybe we could just have again, just a couple lines, just so that how did it go? How'd you feel about the programming? The report outlines it beautifully.
Sure. So summer school had an 18-day run this summer, and we had increasing participation. We are rebounding from our COVID enrollment, and when we had to run summer school completely virtual one summer. We're not quite at our pre-COVID numbers, but we're getting there, so that's nice to see our students returning back into the summer school programming. Most of our programming is elective or encore in nature. It's enrichment for students K-8 or 4K through 8. And then at the high school, it's credit recovery for the most part. The only exception is the ACT prep class. So again, we always encourage staff, if they have exciting new ideas for programming, that we support that. Last year, we had quite a few new classes, so this year, we really stayed with basically the same courses. We program similarly in both communities, so if we run a course in Monona, we run it in Cottage Grove. I think of note is that in Cottage Grove, we've now made the decision that we would run elementary programming at Granite Ridge. And so Taylor Prairie, Cottage Grove, and Granite Ridge all come together at the Granite Ridge site. It works. We weren't sure how it would work. Last year was really that first year, but it works really well. And we've been able to find room for all the students. And even the littles are navigating Granite Ridge just fine. So it looks like we'll continue, if that's all right, in that vein, keeping everybody there. This year's staffing was, again, I'm going to say rebounding. Most of our staff was district staff, and that's always great to see. We prefer to use our district staff since they know the curricula and they are familiar with the students. They've already built relationships. Sometimes we supplement with out of the district hires, but last summer we had more than we did this summer. So it was a really successful 18 days, and I guess the other thing of note is just our summer school coordination is residing mainly with our 12-month associate principals. And so this was the first year that every building was overseen by an associate principal, and it went very smoothly, so.
That's amazing. I just want to tell you, I've heard very positive things about it, and people are very grateful that you're offering the ACT prep.
Yeah.
Our kids used to have to go all the way over to West High School to get that. So thank you very much for your help.
Yeah, if I might add on to that, I was someone who actually did the ACT prep, so thank you for all the effort and work that you've put into that program. I would not have the future that stands in front of me without it.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Thanks always, Lisa, for the summer school report and the pictures I think that were posted on social throughout the 18 days and stuff. It looked really great and fun. I guess a question that I have about planning for next year is that I know there's some communities that coordinate their summer school with like the municipality to help elongate the day for families who maybe like that partial day just doesn't work. Have we thought about that or talked like with Monona or Cottage Grove, like Parks and Rec, to think about like how to do that in a way that we might be able to have more families access it?
I have not, no. The only programming that we have really had ongoing conversation with is Camp Invention, and they use Winnequa for their programming, and so we make sure that that's a nice sort of full day, if you will,
Yeah.
for students who do both. But quite honestly, Elizabeth, it is like a heavy enough list program just for the part of the day that we do.
Cottage Grove had like a playground camp, which is great, but there's like a half-hour gap between like the end of summer school and the beginning of that, and you're like, what are you supposed to
I
do?
can actually speak to
Yeah,
that.
that'd be awesome.
I did meet with Sean probably 3 weeks ago, and they're considering moving the playground camp to Granite Ridge.
Oh, cool.
And then upping the time, so it start immediately.
Like after, so it doesn't have that like, that gap of like go pick up and then like hang. That'd be great. Thanks, Reed.
All right.
Yes.
In the high school, you mentioned credit recovery in the ACT prep. Is there anything else that's, enrichment other than the ACT prep?
We've tried some things in the past, Peter, but those things haven't
Been
run.
successful.
Right, so we've had some teachers with some interest, and they've proposed classes, and we've offered them, but we haven't received the sign up.
How many students are ending up in the ACT prep?
Well, this year I think it was 30-ish, but in years past we've had higher numbers.
I noticed that when you look at the numbers, sort of we're back to pre-pandemic levels for the elementary students, but not for, we're way off on, it seems, the upper grades. If I was going to ask you the racial composition of the people in the ACT prep class versus our average composition, what would it look like?
I'd say I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
I can
just
find it
thinking,
out. I just don't have the demographic data.
about the demographic data, breaking down, barriers for our students of color in terms of post-secondary education, and the testing regimes and so on are part of it. If you look at what Verona is doing, and the question is, are there ways to jumpstart some of our disadvantaged students in terms of their secondary education career?
Well, the course is free and it's open to all students, so.
But how much
anyone can
outreach are we
register,
doing,
and
I guess,
we
to the
promote
kids
it-
who need
We
it most?
promote it vigorously.
Good.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
Did I forget something?
No, I wanted to see if you wanted anything printed.
Did
Any
I?
of the board memos or
Oh,
anything printed?
that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to Dan's superintendent's report.
Okay, I first have one item that's not, on the agenda, but just wanted to provide a clarification. I think I sent an email out to the board members a few weeks ago about this, but there's still some discussion, I think, perhaps in the community about how do things impact, like the proposed Amazon, plant in Cottage Grove, and property values, and how does that impact schools? And I think there's a misunderstanding, I think, by some of our community members. So first of all, when we talk about annexation has nothing to do with school districts. That's strictly a function of municipalities, where villages and cities can annex land, into those municipalities. And school district boundaries do not change. There is a mechanism that they can, it's called a detachment or a small attachment, but it's a process that both school boards have to agree to. And the big picture is that property values have no impact on a school district's revenue. Our revenue limit is set by the formula that we have, what we get. What property values do impact are tax rates and how much individual homeowners might and property owners might pay, but that doesn't impact our school budget at all. And so I think there's this perception that this, high property value, of Amazon being built might be helpful to the district, and it really isn't. And the other reality is that as far as what if it were in the district, so it's in the village of Cottage Grove, but it's north of the interstate, so that's actually in the Sun Prairie School District. And in general, you'd say, well, if there's higher property values, won't that bring our tax rate down then? So they are taking a share of that tax burden. And in theory, yes, that should happen, and folks who live in the village of Cottage Grove might see some tax relief for that. But when it comes to the school tax rate, in theory, the way the formula works is that the higher your property values, the less state aid you get if you're seen as a wealthy district. So if you add on all this property value, you might get less state aid even though they're paying for part of it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go down. And so of course it doesn't work out completely that evenly. It's a complex formula, but I should say, Mark, did I misstate anything there?
No, you're right on.
Okay, so I think if you do get questions from the community, I mean, the information in the memo, you can explain it, but if there's some that you feel that maybe you have some challenges to explain, please refer to me or Mark. Will be glad to have a conversation about that. Okay, and then the other part of my report, of course, we're preparing for the start of the school year. And so I did share with you, first of all, the board participation. You have an opportunity, if you're available, to join us on our Welcome Back breakfast. This year will be on Tuesday, August 29th at the high school. So we have a breakfast served for all of our staff. Then about 8:15, we head into the auditorium for a short program, and you're welcome to stay for that as well. So we'll send out another reminder as we get closer to the date. And then just for your information, the new hire orientation, I put the schedule for that as well for you. And it's very similar to what we've done in previous years. Our team does a great job with that. And really, our mentor teachers do a big part of that planning and leading along with our administrators. So there's never enough. We'd love to have more time, but I think they've done a great job of getting what we need to into the time that we do have allotted. So glad to take any questions on anything about our start of the school year planning.
All right, no questions? Nope, Krishna?
Forgive me, just for the sake of my notes, what did you say the date was for the teacher orientation?
Oh, it is on, thank you, August 29th,
Thank you.
on Tuesday. Yep.
All right, thank you, Dan. Moving on to board reports. Monona Grove Education Foundation, Susan?
Thank you very much. The Monona Grove Education Foundation met yesterday afternoon. Dan started with a report and talked about, which was very interesting, about setting goals to be more transparent on budget goals with staff, families, and community. So he was explaining to them that they are focused on making that, opening up those communication pieces. Under new business, Carrie Robbins actually initiated a discussion on looking for ways to promote Monona Grove Education Foundation, and one of them is through involvement in homecoming, which, you know, will be interesting to see how that plays out. In terms of old business, they continue to discuss school year program fundraising goals. They basically are setting up what's called a CARE campaign. They have a logo and they're sending out letters to individuals and also to sponsors. The campaign will be implemented in October, aimed at individual donors and business sponsors using email, letters, posters, and info on campus to get the word out. Again, to continue to support things that they do, and Krishna can actually speak to a student experience with funding from one of those programs, talking about that. So how was that experience for you?
Yeah, as I mentioned at this last meeting, it was through the, I believe, Summer Opportunity Scholarship that I was allowed to attend the National Leadership Conference back in June. As Dan mentioned in his administrative reports about the students who from MG attended this nationwide, really international leadership conference. And it was just an immense opportunity for us to get to know new people, get to learn new skills, all of which you can bring back to our community. Quite frankly, I mean, there are people I knew in school, I knew of them, but I didn't really know who they were. And so just in our school district alone, I'm sure that so much has been changed for us because of this conference. I mean, our entire lives have been changed, that really the opportunities afforded to us by these grants and by these opportunities is endlessly compounding. And so for that, I'm incredibly grateful for all the work done by the school board as well as the Education Foundation to ensure that students like me, as well as countless other students in our district, have opportunities to succeed and take risks.
Well, and I think that exemplifies how critical the collaboration with the school district and, again, Dan's involvement and the funding from the Educational Foundation go directly to supporting the students within the community, whether it's lunches, snacks, clothes, scholarships, leadership. It's really a very broad range, and they do an excellent job at working on that. The Grant and Awards Committee, there was no updated information on that at this time. The Pay It Forward, again, another program that they're working on, and they're supporting the schools with. Patty Parrott talked about the fundraising committee report, and I just mentioned basically the things she talked about. On Sunday, September 10th, there's going to be a family bingo event. I don't have a location, but I'll get that for us in August. That's going to help support the weekend snack pack program. And again, they're fundraising for the scholarships at this time. And they're still talking about, as a future agenda item, honoring Kathy Thomas, who we lost in March and was a member of the Monona Grove Education Foundation. Their next meeting is September 12th, 2023.
Susan, and you don't have to have the number right away, but do you know roughly how many families we serve with the weekend snack program?
No, I do not know that, but I think that's an excellent question, and I'll ask.
Okay.
And I'll have that for our August meeting. September. This is August.
You can
Oh,
believe
could
it.
it be July? Just might be fast.
All
Moving too
right.
fast.
Moving on to possible action items. First is the 2023-2024 substitute teacher pay rates.
Okay, I think the chart that Nicole put together is, again, pretty self-explanatory. We're essentially recommending about a cost of living increase. Last year, we made a pretty significant increase in our sub-pay to be a little bit more competitive, and you'll see the comparable data from area school districts. So we want to make sure that we keep up, and you can do the math. That daily rate, that's about a 7% increase, and the long-term subbing, that's about a 4.5% increase. So we think those are comparable and should be competitive.
Yes.
I move approval of the 2023-24 substitute teacher pay rates as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
What is the total teacher pay budget? I mean, typically, and
Yeah. I don't want.
What was the question?
how much do we spend on substitute teachers? Yeah.
Direct, our teachers subbing for teachers, or
I mean, these,
with the teachers on call, you mean?
yeah, actually we do through, most of it's through teachers on call, right?
Right. 2 seconds.
You don't have to look it up if you don't.
I mean, it's probably a couple $100,000. Yeah. It's 6 figures easily.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not millions.
No.
And it's also, it's through teachers on call manages that.
Correct.
The daily
Short
subs.
term,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
daily sub.
Yeah.
But that's where most of the expense is the daily subs of the long term, or is that not true?
I would guess.
I would say overall it is.
Yeah, although we have a significant number of leaves, long-term leaves that we cover for, and then that rate is a lot higher
Right.
than
Yeah.
the daily substitute rate. In addition, we have been employing our own building substitutes to help to provide coverage on days when we are unable to secure daily substitutes, and those rates are also higher than the daily rate.
So tell me a little bit about the building substitutes.
Sure, so we have looked at our staffing levels and our unfilled vacancies by each building and recommended based on the number of typical unfilled vacancies that they might have in a current day, week, month average, and hire building substitutes who are assigned to a building, that's their home building, and on a day, if a teacher calls in sick that morning and there's no daily substitute who picks up that assignment, then we have somebody already in-house who can go in and fill in to have less disruption.
And that person is working day to day, they're not,
They work for us, they report every single day.
they report every-
And so in the event that there's no vacancy, I'm sure there's still plenty of ways that they're able to help out and support.
they don't have a contract though.
They don't have a contract.
Okay, and about how many of those people are there?
We have approximately 2 at our elementary schools in Cottage Grove. We have 3 at Winnequa, and I believe we recommended 4 for GDS and the high school this year.
And what is the cost of that compared to a contracted teacher?
They are paid a little bit less than a starting teacher. However, because these are assignments that are for 3 or more months, per like the Affordable Care Act, we do offer them health and dental insurance. So there are some benefits associated with it as well.
And do they primarily do long-term? They probably do short-term sub
They usually do
positions.
short-term, however, sometimes we do have unanticipated leaves that happen. If a teacher does leave mid-year, then we are able to slide somebody in and have less of a disruption for our students.
And I suspect that you find that they are of a better qualified teacher than we get through teachers on call, correct?
Sometimes, and sometimes the individuals that we do find through teachers on call are very solid substitutes, and that's how we find individuals to become our building substitutes as well.
Very good, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
I'm sorry, Krishna had a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, Krishna.
Just a quick one. I just wanted to confirm again with you. What was the increase in percentage that you said earlier?
For the daily subs, a little bit over 7%.
Okay, Krishna.
That was me. Are you requiring that the subs that are assigned to the different schools to have a teaching license or just a substitute license?
We have preferred a teaching license. However, if you have a substitute license, you are able to fill that role. The issue is that you need a teaching license if you were going to be in
Oh,
a position
okay.
for 45 days or more.
Okay.
Philip?
Peter, I was just going to add to, along your line of questioning, I've heard some positive feedback on the building sub approach, in that the building subs obviously get to know the kids and some of the curriculum. And I'm looking to you to confirm my, what I've heard sort of through the community and through some of the teachers. But it sounds like, when they step in for a week or a couple of weeks, the kids often already know them, have a relationship, and then that building sub also already kind of understands how that particular classroom works, and it smooths a lot of the rough spots that you might have with the sub. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that. They're part of your staff.
Yeah.
I mean, they're part of your team, so they get to know not only the staff, other staff members, but the students all know there's another teacher in the building.
Yeah.
It's a really awesome idea that the district came up with, and it's super valuable, even to the point, like, the numbers, you hear like 2 and 2 and 2. Let's say a day that I'm full at Granite Ridge, but they need somebody at Cottage Grove School. We, as principals, communicate, and I can send somebody over there too. So the goal is to, not keep them if we are full, try to get them into a position. So we do that as well, try to share them. And I've shared with Angie from Winnequa at times too, when we needed somebody or they needed somebody. So it's really super helpful because the rates are pretty low with filling substitutes.
Thanks.
All right. We'll get to vote. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion is carried.
You do have to ask for the nays.
Oh. All right, moving on to 2023-2024 extracurricular additive schedule.
Okay, so there's 2 documents attached. The one is the schedule with the recommended increase, and then Joe Schneider, our athletic and activities director, put together a memo with the rationale. And so what you'll see is a number of these positions that we're recommending increases in the compensation. Essentially, it's because of the time commitment and number of students involved to make it more equitable with some of the other positions that we have. And then there are a couple of new positions as well that are being recommended. So I think he did a great job in the memo, but be glad to provide any clarification on any of those individual ones that you might have.
Tom, talk to us a little bit about if you would please, the new positions. I'm not sure I quite understand exactly what's going on there with the stage crew director and division
Yep.
director.
So, with regard to the musical specifically, we only have currently 2 paid positions. The director and then the vocal music director. And of course, they rely on a ton of volunteers,
Right.
with that. And Joe, working with the people who are in those positions now, really believe that it'd be helpful to have a paid position for that stage crew, it's such an important piece. And so that's the rationale behind that one. And then likewise with the show choir, we have our 2 paid positions. But they also rely on volunteers. At times they've hired people to do choreography and so on, but they really believe with the number of students that we have in the programming to have that 3rd paid position. The way Joe explained it to me is he put in parentheses there that the Silver Connection is kind of like the varsity, the Silver Connection dimension, similar to JV, and the visual director would almost be like an assistant, to the head that's going to support that. So again, he's got the data on how many people participate, how many hours they put in, so that's really what those are about.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in all these positions, Joe sat down with the people involved, to come up with these recommendations. So I think they're really sound recommendations.
So Dan, I just want to ask, so the other document that's in the board docs is a 2023-2024 extracurricular schedule with the salary.
Yeah.
And so we already approved that in June.
Yeah, so good point. So
is it just, and this includes, I'm not sure what percent of the base?
So the things, the ones that are in red would be the revisions.
Right, they're
That's
the
what you're
new,
improving.
so basically, there's no changes except for the new additions.
Correct.
Is that the understanding?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And one of the things about the dates, we generally try to bring things in August before the start of the school year, but there's times that things come up in the middle of the year, and so we don't wait. And so you had one of those situations in June
Yes.
that we brought a proposal of something that happened last school year.
Yep. And then to have the rationale. I was just thinking, again, it's helpful to see that it was already approved, but for the public, you might add a line that would say something about additional, or down at the bottom, additions in red show, additions approved on this day. Again, I want the community to be able to see what this document means. Because the question we're going to get is, well, did you approve increases for these people? And the answer to that is, if we did, that would have been done in June.
No, there are some increases as well. There's 2 new positions, but there also are
Okay.
several where there's increases for existing positions.
For the numbers, and that's the rationale.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so again, for the public, I think, again, they're going to need to be able to see both those documents, so I appreciate that they're both in there. I might add a line or 2 of explanation to the first one, and then see rationale, but that's up to you.
All right, can I have a motion, please?
Let's see, I move approval of the 2023-2024 extracurricular additive schedule as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, just like-
You have a question?
No, just a comment, Dan. So I really appreciate the way this rationale is laid out, and what I like about it is that it talks about like the contract or the contact hours. And I always have a comment about the extracurricular schedule and the equity pieces, and I'm curious, like, the next time we see this, is there a way to add a column that's like approximate contract hours? I feel like it's a nice way, or contact hours. I think it's a nice way to like compare potentially, like, why, for example, the, junior varsity coach is at 9% for this, but at, 7% for the, right?
Yeah. I would say that when we look at the activities that are not necessarily athletic activities,
Yeah.
that's where we really rely about trying to do comparable, how much time and how many students.
Yeah.
When it comes to the athletics, we really look at the comparables to other school districts.
Okay.
And that's much heavier weighted about how we
Okay.
pay those.
Okay.
And so I don't know that Joe necessarily has done the time study on all those athletic ones. But I think when it comes to these ones that can fluctuate, I think he noted a couple times that it's hard even to get comparables because our programs don't necessarily match up
Yep,
to other
programs,
districts, and
like
that's where the
Monona.
hours seems to make sense.
Yep.
So, but I think, so to your point, I do think that is a fair expectation every time we bring something forward for a revision, that a good way, that information should be.
Yeah, it was really helpful. This is, I feel like, the clearest proposal or rationale that we've gotten around
Yeah.
the extracurricular schedule, which I think is great. And I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're increasing wages. It's just like, I always want to make sure that we're applying equity across
Yeah.
our non-athletic
And
extracurriculars.
there's no doubt that this will be there's some others that probably will need to be addressed.
Great,
as
thank
well.
you.
All right, we can go to vote. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ayes have it, motion is carried. Okay, next is the 2023-2024 teacher staff handbook revisions.
Okay, so we've got another number of proposed revisions. Nicole coordinated this for us. We generally try to do this every August before the start of the school year. The biggest thing you'll see are some recommendations for some pay increases. And just real quickly, the rationale on those. And many times we try to sometimes go through the personnel committee first. We have an opportunity to get that group together, but these, most of them are kind of procedural. But you might recall summer school pay was really a priority. We had the board increase that one prior to the summer school from $25 an hour to $32. And a number of these other positions that also pay $25 an hour have not been changed in over 10 years. And so we really think now's the time as well to bring those to a comparable amount. So that's the rationale behind those other pieces. The ones that are language changes are things that usually kind of come up throughout the year that we think some clarification would be helpful. And so if you have any questions on any of those, Nicole will be glad to elaborate.
Are there any
All
questions?
seems pretty straightforward.
All right. Can I have a motion, please?
I move approval of the 2023-2024 teacher staff handbook revisions as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried. Okay, next is the 2023-2024 Special Education Assistant Supplemental Compensation.
Okay, so we've talked quite a bit in the past about, some of the shortages that we've had for staffing, and special ed assistance is definitely one of the highest needs right now. And we have a number of positions that are still open going into the start of the school year. The special ed assistants are part of the bargaining unit, so we need to bargain base wages. That hasn't occurred yet for the upcoming year. But supplemental pay, aside from that, is something that the board can approve without bargaining. And we are recommending that to try to attract more people to those positions, that we, for this school year, offer a stipend of $1,000 for our new hires. It is something that some other districts have, looked at, and we've consulted with legal counsel about how this would work. And so it's an idea that we're proposing this evening. So between Nicole and Mark and I will be glad to speak to it or answer any questions.
Probably the obvious question, right, which is, have we thought about the impact on the current staff that are SEAs who won't be receiving an additional $1,000 for being in the position that they're currently occupying?
Yeah, we have, and and we really are in I guess I'll use the term, crisis situation, and the fact that it would be a one-time bonus and not,
Sure.
And so most of the new staff still would be coming in at a compensation lower than our, experienced staff. And certainly, we still have to go to the bargaining table about how we distribute to our current staff as well. So I'm sure that conversation will come up at that time.
Well, it is kind of funny that we haven't completed the bargain, so we can't actually tell them what their salary is going to be, but we can tell them we're giving them $1,000.
Yes.
I'm currently, you're getting paid last year's salary plus whatever the difference is, we'll make it up to you if there's, with the increase in $1,000, but we cannot. And I'm wondering, how does that impact your ability to hire?
Yeah.
And do we need to get our butts in gear and getting an agreement in place?
We're ready to bargain at any time. So it takes two sides to do that. I will say that has been a challenge, right? As we're extending offers to prospective new employees, and I think our team communicated very well that this is current rates. The new rate will be bargained, but we obviously can't promise what that rate will be. We don't know yet, but that's something that Krista and Nicole are working really hard on.
We only have to bargain up to right? You better
up to the base. Yep.
I mean, but if we give an increase, we don't have to bargain that. I mean, if it's important to get this done, we can get this in without bargaining it. I do want to, obviously, I value the input and we want to bargain it, but if we didn't get it done, there are ways to get it done.
Yeah.
Just want to make that point.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Elizabeth?
How many open FTEs do we have right now, Krista, for SEAs?
12.
It's a little bit of a moving target. I want to say it's right around 15. We've filled a number. We've conducted nearly 14 or 15 interviews with great qualified people. We landed all of those people, and we're working very hard on that. We're getting some good applicants. We had a number of retirements last year and a little bit of attrition, and but I do want people to know we've added a number of positions based on transfer students in, essentially. We'll have a lot of significant needs. So the bulk of those are new positions. A lot of those are new positions. We're just shifting things around with our transition program and things like that. So
we feel good about the folks we have on board. It'd be great to give them that incentive. But yeah, it continues to be a challenge everywhere.
Do you think $1,000 is enough? Like, could we absorb something else?
I think it's a significant amount that,
It does, you worry about equity issues, as you mentioned.
Uh-huh. But also our students need supports,
Yeah.
right? So it's sort of like, yes, and
Yes.
if our students are appropriately supported, that's, to me, I'll say this out loud, but like, that to me is like a larger equity issue than
Mhm.
a staff person feeling like maybe they missed out on an opportunity for some additional funding, not to diminish the importance of cash in folks' pockets, but anyway, just a question. But if you feel comfortable with it, I feel comfortable with it, so.
All right, can I have a motion, please?
Let's see, where is it? I move approval of the $1,000 stipend and additional compensation for all new full-time special education assistants for the 2023-2024 school year who have a start date on or after August 29th, 2023, to be received after successful completion of their probationary periods.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes.
How long is our probationary period?
6 months.
Thanks.
All right, we can move to vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried. Okay, next is the educational assistance for special education assistants.
okay, so this is another recommendation to help us. This is actually for, to help us with our teaching positions. It's specifically a tuition reimbursement program for our current SEAs who might have an interest in becoming certified teachers. And so the plan agreement, the section 127, first, I believe an IRS, code, and Nicole's worked with legal counsel to offer tuition reimbursement for hourly employees. There's a lot of IRS regulations, so on. That's why it's such a lengthy document. But Nicole did a great job putting this together, so I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes.
I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm really excited about it. I think it's an important part of like trying to at least make a dent into the pipeline problems that we're having. So thank you for doing it and putting it together.
Yes.
So just to make sure I am comprehending this in its full aspects. So as far as I understand it, SCAs would be able to apply for tuition reimbursement to pay for the education they need to become full-time teachers.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
And it's another incentive to hire SEAs.
So just for clarification purposes, so if a person is applying for this program but can't afford it up front, then the district will then pay them directly, pay the school directly, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
There is that option, instead of having it be a reimbursement, but we can pay on the current amount of both.
Okay. Yes.
I move approval of section 127 plan agreement for educational assistance for special education assistants as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, open the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried. All right, next is the resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in amount of not to exceed $7,600,000 and issuance of taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program. I probably butchered that.
Those ones all are.
Mark's agenda items are really valuable.
My explanation won't take as long as the actual.
Actual.
Yeah, every year we need a short-term borrow because of the way the taxes and our income or revenue flow. And we, PMA, who's our financial advisor, gets a bunch of districts together to do a group bid, and so there would be better rates and bigger pot of money that people want to lend us. So usually we do this a little later in the year, but because we only have one board meeting now a month, we needed to move up the time schedule or the time frame. They will do the bid in early September, and then we close on it in October. So.
For those of you new to the board, this is so we can make our payroll before the first state aid payment comes in.
Yeah, so to clarify, we're not accumulating
No.
long-term debt or something.
No, it's short-term. We pay it off.
Cover it,
We
yeah.
pay it off. Technically, we have to pay it off before we borrow again. That's why the date says, the bid goes out in September, we pay it off in September, and then we get the new money in October.
Got it.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Makes sense, it makes sense.
No,
Does it?
Essentially, we will.
I'm not saying it's good.
When does first aid payment come in?
Well, we get
So
one,
weird.
it's more for the taxes, because we don't get our taxes.
We got the tax
Yeah,
payment.
we get 2 aid payments in fall, but it's not enough to get us through until taxes.
Right.
So,
So we spend our fund balance down, and we spend the aid, and then we run out of cash, and we have to borrow till the tax comes in January.
Middle of January.
Yeah.
Like a payroll tax.
Can I have a motion, please?
No, because then we have to read it.
Because I
again.
have to read it.
I move approval.
Take a really deep breath.
I move approval of the resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in an amount not to exceed $7,600,000, issuance of taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes, and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program as presented.
And of course, lawyers wrote that, so.
All right, any
How much
further
that cost?
discussion?
I like that it's the taxable tax as opposed to the untaxable tax.
Actually, tax exempt versus
Oh,
taxable.
that would be untaxable tax,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
You
All
know
right.
what? Those lawyers.
Moving to vote. All those in favor?
Yeah,
Any
that's-
opposed? Motion is carried. Let's have it. All right, moving on to discussion items, annual meeting agenda.
The annual meeting agenda is attached, it's the same as it has been in past years. Annual meeting is September 11th at 6 PM in the common area next door.
Has anybody checked if Green Bay's paying the plans that way?
I did not.
They aren't, but I just.
No.
Ask that question.
It's 6 o'clock, it'll be over way before the tag starts. If not, I'll make sure it is.
This board once had this board meeting, we had our board meeting during the Green Bay, in the Packers Vikings game when Brett Favre was playing for the Vikings.
And the same amount of people showed up as always showed up.
Actually, there were many fewer. There was some.
One year there fewer than one.
Yeah.
There were 3 people.
So, just to chime real briefly, as a reminder, of course, the annual meeting is not a board meeting, it's a meeting of the electors. And since revenue limits went in place in 1993, it became a lot less significant because we know what our limit is. Before that, you actually did set the tax levy when the board had more control over what it might be. So it is kind of a formality, but it's a statutory requirement.
And it's not a approval of the budget, it's approval of the levy and other little things like your pay and things. But yeah, people don't understand that either. It's a hearing for the budget, but the actual approval is for the levy. Which is changed in October anyway.
Right.
So,
All right,
And there's no property issues on the,
future meeting dates?
Oh, do we need to pick a date?
yeah, so if you, under the admin content, you might recall I put a memo up that we would like to have a facilities planning workshop. Our friends from McKinstry will be there to facilitate that discussion. So we have 6 potential dates to choose from. So if we could choose one this evening and get it locked in, that would be great. And then we also confirm the time that you'd like to start.
Are we in person for that?
That would be an in-person one, yes.
Okay.
I will be out of town September 18 and 19. Two, 4, 17, 18, any of those dates are fine. In October, any of the October dates are fine.
Okay.
Or before the 18th and 19th, if we want to, I don't know if you can move
These
it
are
up.
the dates we got from McKinstry. That they're
All right,
available,
so
so.
never mind.
4th would work well for me.
Wednesday in
Is it-
October.
How, evening?
Yeah,
Or-
so it'd typically be about a 2-hour meeting. Normally, we start workshops at 6 o'clock. We could move it up to 5 if that's more convenient, but otherwise, it typically is 6 o'clock meeting.
The 4th or the 18th in October, either one of those works well for me.
Okay.
Want to start with the 4th? How is everyone?
I prefer the 18th. I might be traveling for work on the 4th.
Okay.
But if the 4th works better for everyone, there's like, right now I'm not held for travel, but I'm held for travel the day before. So it's a little iffy.
I can do any of them.
Susan?
I'm flexible for those dates right now.
I'm flexible. And you said you're not available the 18th?
I'm not available on September 18th.
Okay.
But is that October 18th work okay for you?
Yep.
Can you wait that one again? Is that okay?
Yep. So, sounds like we're here October 18th?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that. That's it.
All right. We'll definitely get out some reminders too, but we'll lock
The
that in.
18th of October?
And then 6 o'clock, is that the
Great.
best time for everyone?
That works for me.
All right, so we can skip 08.
6 o'clock.
That was only if you wanted to go back and
Okay.
close together.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so can I have a motion for adjournment?
Excuse me?
Yep.
I realize this isn't on the agenda, but do you mind if I make a quick announcement to the board?
Sure.
Okay, so this will only take a couple minutes, but a couple days ago, the Herald Independent reached out to me if I wanted to do a monthly report on the doings of the school board, apropos of these meetings. I agreed, and I'm willing to do a quick write-up, a summarization of meeting contents, and I can, of course, send it to all of you or any particular persons for approval, just to make sure all my information is on point. But that is a position I'm willing to fulfill for this board if you are in approval of it.
So we would have to put that on the next meeting, right? And-
We don't have anything to approve here.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, you can do that.
Okay.
I would appreciate that if you send that before you send it, so we allow us to, but not quite, to make sure you have things right, but we don't have to approve that
Okay.
either.
Could I, for clarification, who with,
Herald Independent.
okay, I strongly suggest we have a conversation with Katie, because she has a regular communication with them, and so let's talk about that.
Sounds good, will do.
Okay.
Yes.
I would just say, I think it's wonderful that you want to give a report out. So for instance, we report out from the committees we're on, and nobody reviews those reports before we put them out.
We don't give them to the Herald, though.
Correct.
Yeah, we have a board policy with regard to.
Yeah, so we'll let
we'll
Dan
follow up on
and
it.
Yeah.
Katie.
Yeah, that's
follow
the reason I
up on
wanted to discuss
Yeah.
it more in depth.
that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right, motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Mike,
Motion
I
carries.
can read your